Here's what happened today. We be closing this live page soon and opening a new one shortly. Here are the main developments so far. Iranian missiles struck multiple locations in Israel, resulting in at least 4 deaths and dozens of injuries in response to continued Israeli assaults on Iran. Iran says Israeli attacks have killed at least 80 people, including women and children, and injured more than 320 others after it targeted cities, military installations, and nuclear facilities. Israel's army military has warned Iran's military will likely launch another missile barrage at Israel in the coming hours. Israeli spokesperson Brigadier General Efi Diffrin says more than 40 Iranian sites were targeted, including air defense systems and command infrastructure. 3 members of the elite Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps have been killed during ongoing Israeli attacks in Zanjan province. Iran's foreign ministry says it would be meaningless to join nuclear negotiations with the United States in Oman while it is under attack by Israel. The U.S. has denied the Iranian allegation of being complicit in Israel's attacks and told Tehran at the UN Security Council it would be wise to negotiate over its nuclear program. Israel says killed more than 20 Iranian commanders. The Israeli military says its airstrikes on Iran killed more than 20 Iranian army and Revolutionary Guards commanders, including Armed Forces Chief Mohammad Bagheri. Since the beginning of the operation on Friday, over 20 commanders in the Iranian regime's security apparatus have been eliminated, the military said in a statement, naming several top commanders of Iran. EU's top diplomat says diplomacy can lead to lasting solution. Kaya Kallas has held discussions with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and she warned the risk of further escalation in the Middle East remains dangerously high. The EU has always been clear. Iran must never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. Only diplomacy can lead to a lasting solution, she said. All quiet from the U.S. government as questions swirl. Where it stands, there hasn't been any comment from the Trump administration on Saturday about the strikes between Israel and Iran. There hasn't been any clarity on whether the Trump administration actually knew and it gave approval for the Israeli airstrikes on Iranian targets. It is also not clear whether the Trump administration is actively engaged in any diplomacy to try and ratchet down the tensions between these two countries. It is unclear if President Trump is willing or prepared to commit U.S. military forces to a fight between Israel and Iran. Donald Trump campaigned on pulling the U.S. out of global conflicts, but certainly now, there is a lot of concern whether U.S. forces might become more directly involved. In order to protect Israel, there is a treaty between the two countries on mutual defense. So there is a question if the Trump administration is doing anything to try and roll back what has already been 48 hours of direct conflict. It is worth pointing out the former national security advisor was removed from his position because he was perceived to be perhaps more of a warmonger than the U.S. president was comfortable having inside his cabinet. Drone strike claims lives of 2 Iranian police officers, local media. Iranian media says a police chief and another officer were killed in an Israeli attack earlier today, about 300 kilometers, 186 miles west of Tehran. This morning, Police Chief Major Habibullah Akbarian, along with Second Lieutenant Amir Hossein Saifi, were murdered by a drone strike in Asadabad city in the western province of Hamadan, the ISNA press agency reported. The danger is that it escalates out of control, Israeli affairs analyst Dan Perry says. He is sure the Israeli public is largely united in its support of strikes targeting Iran's nuclear program. However, he said the current government in Israel is not popular as Netanyahu's government has a history of not knowing how to end a war. We've seen that in Gaza, where the stated goals seem potentially unachievable, and it's become quite open-ended. No one wants to see that happen with Iran, He said, "The danger is that it escalates out of control. If Iran really doesn't intend to ramp up their response, I believe they said it would be 20 times worse in the coming hours. And that causes great damage in Israel. Then it really could escalate," he noted, adding that such a situation could draw in the U.S. Israeli military expects Iran to launch missile barrages tonight. Israeli army radio reports that the Israeli military has warned that Iran's military forces will launch missile barrages at Israel tonight. It stated that the barrages will be similar to the retaliatory attacks seen on Friday night. Israeli army says 70 jets took part in strikes on Iran. Spokesperson Brigadier General Efi Defrin says more than 40 Iranian sites were targeted, including air defense systems and command infrastructure. Dozens of aircraft are operating freely over Tehran thanks to our opening strikes, he told reporters, adding that the initial attacks on Iran gave Israel aerial freedom all the way to Tehran. Fighter jets and drones flew over Tehran for some 2.5 hours during the overnight assault. Defrin said, "We have created aerial freedom of action from West Iran all the way to Tehran. Tehran is no longer immune," he added.